Welcome to the Freebirth podcast, a supportive space for people who are learning, exploring, and celebrating their autonomous choices in childbirth. Together, we'll unpack truths, share personal stories, and claim our ability to birth freely and intuitively. Here's your host, Emily Saldea.
Are you craving a community of like-minded women? Do you feel like an outsider in your family or your community? Well, I may have the place for you. We have a Freebirth Society private online community that's full of radical and wild women just like you. If you resonate with the topics that we explore on this podcast and want to belong in a circle of women who support each other in the self-exploration of free birth and wild mothering, come join us. You can apply online at our website, freebirthsociety.com. It's where myself and my team are hanging out these days, and we would love to get to know you. After a terrible first birth in the hospital, Laura knew she would not return. She resolved to free birth at home with her second child and tells us of the awkward navigation it took being a military family choosing something so radical. Laura came to her own conclusion that to have a licensed midwife in a home birth would be bringing the hospital to her, which was something she did not want. What would have been a highly medicalized birth in the system became a normal and ecstatic birth at home, even with her child's growth restriction and tight double nuchal cord. Laura then free birthed her third child and tells us of her challenging recovery.
I got pregnant really young. I got pregnant at 19.
Oh, wow.
And about 2 months, And about 2 months before that, my husband and I were talking about where we were going to go and what life was going to look like for us. And we decided that he was going to join the Navy, and that was the best, option for us, really. Like, that would house us, that would give us, insurance and whatever. And that would be a good, stable beginning for us. And so he started the process for that. And then we found out shortly after that I was pregnant. And so during that time, I really, the only, I guess not memories, but the only thing that stuck with me that I knew about childbirth, because I didn't really know anything about it, or I didn't
Sure.
it didn't interest me, or stuff like that. It wasn't something that I learned about in my spare time.
Mm-hmm.
Was that one story when I was little, my friend told me. She was like, my mom said that giving birth is the most painful thing in the world. And that was the only thing, my mom, she had 4 babies naturally, at the hospital, but there was never any, description like that just stuck to me. And so that was the only thing. And I'm like, I can't let it be like that. I can't, I don't want it to be like that. Is that true? Is it really like that?
Yeah.
And so basically I started reading. I don't remember where I came across home birth for the first time, but I remember just thinking it's crazy how we don't know these things exist before they do, And so finally I had figured it out, and I'm like, oh my God, people do this. This is great. If people do this, then that must be a lie about it being the worst experience of your life. And so at the time, my husband was going to be in boot camp when I was giving birth. And so I was living with my in-laws, and I was like, well, I can't have a home birth, so I'll just do the hospital, and I'll just, I'm educated. I know I need to defend myself. I'd done some research, and I just went in crossing my fingers.
Wait.
Mm-hmm.
Boot camp means he can't leave, kind of thing?
Yeah, no, the only way you can talk is paper mail.
Damn, that's hardcore.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And was it in the same state as you?
No, he was in Illinois and I was
Okay.
in Oregon.
Okay.
Mhm.
So and then lastly, just why did you say, and I know I can't have a home birth? What was that piece?
Oh, I just figured it wasn't in the books for me. I didn't try, like, I think if I would have had, well, and the insurance thing, like where it wasn't covered. And so I just I didn't fight for it that badly. I just thought, well, maybe the second one, or, like, this is what's
Yeah.
convenient now,
Totally.
like, you don't go into it. I mean, until you experience it, or if you're, next to someone, like, you don't really, I don't know, like, there's a level of ignorance.
Totally. Yeah. Yeah. I've
And
always,
so,
I've
yeah, so
always
I was,
said and thought, like, if women could witness hospital births prior to
mhm.
being pregnant, the the amount of women that would choose it would drop dramatically.
Yes. Yeah, it totally would.
Okay, so you're like,
Yeah.
okay, my man's not going to be there. I'm having a hospital birth, but I'm educating myself and I'm going to be able to hopefully navigate the system, even though I'm becoming aware of it not being super great.
Yeah. And I decided to have my mom with me and my best friend. And my mom, of course, I mean, she was fine, she was supportive, but she wasn't like, she's not one to, go against the grain and, like, with the medical establishments and stuff, like, she wouldn't, I don't even think I really asked her, but, like, she was just there for me, but she wasn't like a voice, or like,
Hmm.
like what a husband would be.
Hmm. No, not really.
Um,
I mean, even that.
yeah, right. Or what
Yeah.
you would hope. Yeah.
Husbands are like, in my experience, husbands are the most silent in hospital births. But I hear what you're saying, like doula,
Really?
someone
Oh
to speak
gosh.
up.
Yeah. Anyway, so yeah, so of course I went in with my fingers crossed. I can't say, like, I wasn't cut without my permission, or, like, I didn't have some, like, super traumatic things happening, but, like, my midwife, who is also, like, a friend of mine, um, at the hospital, um, had some mandatory meetings. So she was gone the whole time.
Mm.
So I had this nurse who just super disrespectful, like, kept hounding me. Like, I finally found my happy place in the tub, and my best friend's with me in there, and, just, yo, you're doing great. And then she comes in, tells me I need to get out. And I'm like, I don't want to get out. And then comes in 10 minutes later, tells, no, you really need to get out. So I can't, like, I just can't, which I find this is common, but, like, I can't stand up for myself in labor. Like, I can't say no, even if I'm screaming no on the inside. Like,
Mhm.
I physically can't tell them no. And I don't know why that is.
Mm.
But I didn't want to get out. And because she's like, how far apart are your contractions? And I thought they were a few minutes apart. And then found out they were, a minute and a half every minute. And then decides that I need Pitocin. And then, of course, it goes downhill from there.
Yeah.
And then, yeah, within like 20 minutes, I'm crying for the epidural and
Hell
da
yeah,
da da da.
Pitocин's no joke.
I know, and they were a minute and a half long and a minute apart. Like,
Right, you
I
didn't
did
need
not
it.
need that. And it was
Yeah.
just this nurse that just, and the whole thing from start to finish was only 8 hours.
It's
So it was like,
it's so interesting to me how aghast people are when I or whoever suggest that this is truly run as a business and they literally want to turn over the rooms. Like, I guess it just sounds so
yeah.
evil that is one of the many incentives. But I've literally
Mm-hmm.
heard, charge nurses barking at nurses like, pit her, we need the room. It's a busy night. Like, let's get shit going. I just,
Yeah,
okay, I'm with you.
I know. So, yeah. So anyway, so the whole thing, and she came out and whatever. And of course, it's all dramatic at the end with the low heart rate, and they stick this needle thing, that scalpel thing that they put in their head, to tell their heart rate.
Mm-hmm.
And so they, it's like this little spiral,
Yeah,
horrible.
that
I don't know
screws
who invented it.
into their heads.
Yes, it screws. Yes, that's the word. Oh, so yeah. So of course it's all dramatic at the end. Oh, we need to get her out because her heart rate's dropping, or we're going to section you. And I think that was the only time I think I physically said no. So she comes out, of course, and she's like, a little floppy and whatever. So they cut her cord right away, and then they take her away, and they're saying that she's cold, and they put her under this lamp or whatever. for like 20 fucking minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm like sitting there just like staring at her, like, again, like internally, like, can I have my fucking baby? And finally I said something after about 20 minutes, but I'm just like, why is she over there when I'm right here? Like, doesn't need to be warm under a light bulb, you know? Yeah. Like she needs to be naked on my chest.
But again,
So
I mean,
anyway,
this is what everything goes back to when you're birthing in a system that views women as broken machines and that their technology is better, then why would they put a naked baby on a naked mom when there's these machines, that can
I
do
know.
something subpar? Ugh, I'm so sorry that happened to you.
I know, it's so backwards. Yeah, it's okay. Let's see. So yeah, so in that moment, like that night, I was like, I'm never doing this again. Like, if I can help it, I will never be here again. And so 9 months later, I got pregnant with my second.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and it was, I mean, we had wanted them close together, but not like that close together.
Yeah.
But, again, it only takes once. And yeah, and so I'm like, okay, that's it. You just put a baby in me. And sure enough, there was a baby. And so so I was really excited though, because I was like, basically like, I needed my better birth. Like I needed to breathe again, and I needed to like heal myself and know that there's something better out there, that's not so dramatic. And
how did you feel in that year postpartum? It sounds like you had a real understanding of what bullshit was done to you.
Yeah, it was really frustrating. I was really like, just really angry that I couldn't speak up for myself, because like that whole time I was there, like I wanted, like I had this insight, like this is when I discovered my instincts. I forgot to mention this, was like I was in the bathroom and I just wanted to lock the door and I wanted to hide out in there until she was born. And it was like this inner voice that was just telling me to do that. And I was like, what is this? Like in the time, it's so confusing. But later I'm like, oh my God, like that was my instincts. That was like my inner, whatever wisdom, like telling me this is what you need to do to, protect yourself. But, so that whole year I was just mad that I didn't listen to myself really. But, basically just hoping that I could redeem, myself and my next baby, and that it would be better.
Okay.
Basically.
So you're pregnant pretty soon after.
Yes. And that pregnancy, again, both of them were really like pretty easy. Like I didn't really have any nausea. I didn't really, especially with my son, I really just never like, I would forget that I was pregnant because I felt so good. And yeah, which is hard to believe after being pregnant with my third, but yeah, it was great. Like everything was just smooth sailing, which was good because I had, a little baby at the same time.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, totally.
I know.
Okay,
I don't know how I did it.
Walk me to how you go from a hospital birth into, like, obviously I know you free birthed your second, but what does that prenatal care look like? How did you get into free birth from that space?
So from that, I started looking into, obviously home birth again, because I was like, okay, this is what I'm doing. And I started looking into midwives, and then I realized like, okay, I'm like, okay, well, what does a midwife do? Like at home, like what can they do, that I can't do on my own, or what's different from a midwife in a hospital? And I basically came to my own conclusion that having a midwife was like bringing the hospital into your home.
Wow.
And I didn't want that,
Wow.
because I just read like so many stories, and a big comment, like another thing I researched was transfer stories, because I wanted to know why women were transferring. And for free birth, the number one thing that I came across was the mom felt something was wrong, and so she went in. And then the second thing was, if there was a midwife there, it was the midwife wanting to transfer the mom against her will. And so I was just like, oh, okay, I'm not going to have a midwife at all. Like, this is great. I don't have to deal with any of that, because I thought I was going to have to apparently there were some loopholes with the insurance and whatnot. And so I thought like I was going to have to go through all that. And so I was like, oh, this is great.
You're in California at this point.
Mm-hmm. So we're on base in Southern California. And so, so I was like,
how early in your pregnancy did you realize you were going to do this without a midwife?
Oh, like by 12 weeks.
Okay, cool.
It was within my first, it was within like my first couple weeks of reading that I came to the conclusion about the midwifery and all that. So then it was really soon.
So you just had a wild pregnancy that was fully autonomous?
No, I still saw someone. And that's another whole thing too, was that my first baby, she was fine, but they thought, because I dropped so early, they thought that her growth slowed down, which she came out like, she was under 6 pounds, but she was, she had like 2-inch long dark brown hair. She, she was totally ready. Like she looked healthy. But with my second pregnancy, and I still to this day, I don't know why, but I did have like growth restriction with him at the end.
Really?
And I don't know why. Yes. And I realized that I drank a lot of, what's that called? Red raspberry leaf, like throughout the whole pregnancy. And apparently something I learned was it's a diuretic, which can affect blood volume expansion. So I don't know if that was it, because his cord was thin, his placenta was small, and he was just about under 5 pounds. So he was a tiny little peanut.
So who were you seeing for prenatal care with your boy?
Oh God, you're going to die. A male OB is what I was seeing, which he actually was a nice guy, and he used to do home birth midwives, but I never told him my plans. Like I saw him and he was like, well, baby's small, baby should come out, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, no, I'm good. Like I knew instinctively, like my intuition was so strong with him that,
wait, hold on. We got to pull back.
I know,
for a second. No, it's okay. I just got to like contextualize this a little bit. So you realized at whatever, like first trimester, that you're going to birth at home without medical assistance, but then you also are seeking obstetrical care the whole time knowing that you're going to stay home. Like, tell me more about that. Cause that's like
I like the paper trail is really why I do it. I like I don't know, it just helps me sleep better at night, cause I'm like, that way, like I have my eyes, however they say that, my eyes crossed and my T's or not the other way around.
You're like, I don't even know what the expression is.
Whatever the fuck it is.
So you like the paper trail, you like the illusion of being in the system, but so then are you going to have like an oopsies accidental kind of home birth or what's your plan when you're pregnant?
So no, I just didn't tell him. I mean, he was nice and he didn't, I didn't do like a whole lot of tests or anything, but at the end he started getting a little naggy because he was like, well, they're only, which they don't know anything at all about babies that don't, grow on par. And so he's like, well, we should induce you, baby should come out. And I just, I felt totally confident saying no. And so he's like, okay, like, what's he going to do? He didn't like threaten me or anything like that. And so, so basically
that didn't shake your decision at all?
No, not at all. Because I'll tell you why. My husband was like nervous the whole time. And so which his end was it's a whole other story of the harassment that he was receiving from his command and all the people that were telling him that his wife was going to kill his baby, which is a whole other thing.
Because why? And because you wouldn't be induced?
Oh no, because he told people that we were having the baby at home, and I'm like, honey, no, you can't tell people that, but he wanted to make sure that, because people are like saying it's illegal and stuff, and so he asked one of his uppers And then, somehow word got out. And then,
Oh,
he's getting
man.
all these harassment things. Like,
Mm.
So he's coming home and he's like, oh my God, this guy said this and this guy said this. And I'm just like, no. I'm like, they're idiots, like you can't just stop talking, like stop telling people, because then he'd try to defend me, and say things. And sometimes like it wouldn't be accurate or something. And I'd be like, no, honey, just stop.
Just literally shut up. So, but
Yeah,
it sounds like he was on your team and he was supportive of your choice.
he was. Yeah, he was, but he was nervous. And so like in the beginning, he's like, he was worried about me and worried about the baby. And basically I mean, not to be rude, but basically I said, you can join me or you can leave, but I'm going to be doing this. And so after that, then, he kind of settled into, okay, we're doing it, or you're doing it, and I'll just be here.
I wish more women, would roll that way because, I've said this before, but time and time again, when I hear stories like what you just said, that when women are like, this is happening, you can join me or not. All of a sudden, when you take ownership over being a leader, which you are, whether you admit it or not, if you're the pregnant woman about to birth your baby, you are the leader. Again, whether you realize it or your husband realizes it or not, it's just true. And so I love hearing those stories of women being like, yeah, you can join me or not, but this is happening, because 100% of the time that I have heard women tell me those stories, the husbands or the partners are like, okay, cool, I'm on board.
Yeah, I know. I feel like those women truly I feel like if they if they were 100% wanting to have the baby at home, like I feel like that would be their answer, Like it always seems a little fishy to me.
Yep, exactly. I think that there is definitely a bypass of responsibility occurring when women are blaming their husbands or their partners. And it's like, well, actually, if you really wanted to do it and you were committed to it, you would do it. And so,
right.
And I mean, there is also whatever is transpiring is going to probably be in keeping with the dynamic of the relationship, right? So, if the partner is the leader and he or she, but usually it's a he, that tries to sabotage the dynamic or the wishes of the woman, and it gets complicated.
Like the ones that call, like when they call 911 behind the mother's back.
Oh my God, it's the worst.
I couldn't believe that. I know I heard a couple of those stories. I was like, oh my gosh. Like, okay, I guess that does change for perspective a little bit, but
you're right. I mean, if there was, and maybe this is, I'm not trying to sound, uncompassionate to the reality of living with basically an abusive person who would do that. But, if you're, and also, I mean, it's an interesting conversation because also it doesn't need to be a woman's highest priority. Like a woman's highest priority might be keeping peace with their partner for their own calculations and whatever. I respect that. But I agree. I think there's something a little bit bypassy to when people blame stuff on their partners because, you could get a hotel room or you could whatever.
Right.
Basically what I'm saying is I've never met a woman who, if she was actually committed to free birth or home birth, that didn't make it happen.
Right. Yeah. Totally.
Okay. So you've got an interesting dynamic here. You're living on base. Your partner is very kind of adorably running his mouth and trying to figure out his place in all of this. And then you're seeing this male OB who is telling you your baby has some growth restriction, which I guess sounds like might be potentially true and is trying to induce you. And then you're just like the center of the storm being like, everybody chill the fuck out. Everything's going to be fine.
Yeah. And I didn't tell, I didn't tell anybody. Like our neighbor knew, like our next door neighbor knew. But other than that, I didn't tell a soul because I was like, I don't want the flack. Like I don't want the negativity, I don't want any of that.
So tell me about his birth.
Okay. So, wait. So one more thing though. So at I think it was during week 38, my husband was still nervous. And so I said, okay, fine. We can tour the hospital. And so we went there and we toured it. And I'm telling you, Emily, I have never had a more like cold, like feelings of death in my life. Like,
Ugh.
I walked through there and I was like, oh my God, like, which I then knew, you know, my instincts. And I was like, oh no, like, I can't have him here. Like, I don't think he would make it. And so the whole drive home, I was silent. And then we got home and I was like, I gotta tell you, like, trying to find words for like what I felt, you know?
Mm.
And I was like, I can't have him there. Like,
Mm-mm.
I just can't. And so that was pretty much like, that was like my moment when I was done, you know, finally done researching and reading and all that. And so finally, like, just those past couple weeks were just like, you know, sitting and waiting and smooth sailing, I guess, you know, or whatever. So anyway, so yeah, so his birth. So I was, let's see, I was 39 and 4, I think. And I had another checkup because whatever, I had one and I didn't, you know, I don't care to, I guess not go or whatever. So I was like, oh, you know, another checkup, whatever. So, he does that, what is that called? That NST machine or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And, which of course baby was fine according to that, whatever that even does. And, so he's like, well, you kind of like seem like you're in labor. Like, you know, I was having contractions, which I was for a few days, like prior to that, they were like, well, since Monday, they were like 10 to 20 minutes apart. And, it felt good to like, you know, lean over something. So I knew it was, you know, I was getting somewhere. And so, so I had him strip my membranes.
What
And
do
he
you
said,
mean?
okay,
What do you
here's
mean
my,
you had him? Like you were like,
so
I want this?
no, he wanted to induce me again. And so I think, which even then, like, I thought, you know, knowing what your dilation was meant something or
Mm-hmm.
whatever. So he checked me. And then, I think my compromise was sweeping. I don't remember how it happened, but I was like, okay, whatever. I was fine with it. And so he said, okay, well, here's my cell, you know, call me when you get to the hospital. Cause I was contracting pretty regularly. And, so I was like, okay, bye. And so I went home and of course, you know, I didn't call him or anything. And, so I got home and the whole way home, they were every like 4 to 5 minutes. And then, I just kind of hung out. I drank some like nettle tea and, just kind of labored throughout the evening. And then, I finally got in the tub at like, I think it was like 6 or 7. And I was in the tub for a couple hours and husband was just taking care of baby. Like this whole labor, like I just wanted to be alone. And I don't know why, because, you know, every labor is so different. But for this one, I just wanted to be completely alone. And so, so I was in the tub for a few hours and then I got out and then, came downstairs and like ate some dinner and, did the dishes. And then finally, like it was starting to get dark around like 9, I think it was. And I was like, oh, and I was so relieved that I'd made it to the nighttime because I just wanted I wanted that peacefulness of it, you know, like I wanted the dark, like I had my candles lit. Like I was just like, oh, okay, this is, you know, this is it. Like, this is great. And so, so I just pretty much labored. I mean, just kept on laboring throughout the night. I had to keep moving. Like I could not sit still. Like I tried sitting down, which of course it made me tired, but if I wasn't in the tub, like I couldn't even sit down. Like I had to be like walking or, you know, leaning over the counter and like swaying my hips back and forth. And, finally, I think around midnight, I got in the tub again. And then it started getting pretty intense. And my husband had went to sleep with my baby. And so I tried like calling him to wake him up because I'm like, oh, I'm like having, you know, that moment, which I wasn't in transition, but that moment where I'm like, am I really doing this? Like I'm batshit crazy right now.
Totally.
Like I'm in the tub at midnight. Like, you know, what am I doing? And, anyway, so he didn't answer. So I waited like another hour and then I got out and then, at that point I did wake him up and I was like, I need food. I'm hungry. And maybe a bowl or something. So he went and got me food in a bowl and I, ate it and threw up and did all that. And then, I was hanging over my dresser on my yoga ball and I was rocking back and forth and I was just like, oh my gosh, and I was getting pretty vocal. Like things were getting pretty intense. And then all of a sudden my water like burst and I jump up and I had we were upstairs, like in a townhome and there was carpet. So I had the whole like shower curtain out with the Chuck's pads and towels on it and stuff. And so I dove for that because holy fluid, like there was so much fluid, like it was everywhere. And so so immediately like water broke. I went down, like basically like our bed was on the floor, and so I was just like leaning over our bed on all fours, and he was just coming right out.
Oh my gosh.
So it was like, I mean, I don't know which contractions switched up at that point. Like they went from being, whatever, longer and I don't know, however contractions go. They switched up to short and quick. Like it was like 20 seconds every 20 seconds. Like they were just like short and strong. And I remember it was really awesome because I wasn't doing I did zero pushing for this one. Like my body, like I never sweat either. And like my forehead was sweating. And I remember thinking, this is so fucking awesome. Like my body, like it's, it's like you're running a marathon, but you're not. Like I wasn't doing anything, but yet like I was sweating and my body was like pushing the baby out. I don't know. It was just so cool. And so, like, I don't know, 10, 15 minutes. And he comes out and his head comes out. So my husband's behind me, ready to catch him for me because my hands are like on the bed. And I was like, you have to catch him because I'm not, like I didn't want to get up in a squat or anything. And so so his head comes out and then he's like, my husband's like, oh, his head's out and his little hand, because he had like a little hand over his eye.
Aww.
And I know. And then I waited for the next contraction and then his body came out. And I immediately, got up and then reached under and grabbed him, and then he didn't reach. So I look, it's dark in our room. So then I look and I feel for his neck, and he had the cord pretty impressively, like wrapped really tightly around his neck twice. And so I couldn't hook it or anything. So I just unrolled him on the soaking wet floor, probably really cold. And I just kind of, just rolled him like a little potato, and then scooped him right back up. And he was pretty fluidy, like you could hear the fluid. And so I just put him I put his little belly on my palm, and then I tilted him down. And, so he'd like drain some of the fluid or whatever. And then just flipped him over, and he looked up at me, and I was just like basically in shock. Like the whole pregnancy I had like hoped and prayed for a big baby because I got so much flack for my daughter being small, which she wasn't even really that small, but I was just like, this is going to be a big baby, and I just ate like a tub of peanut butter a day. And I was just like, I was so determined to have a big baby. And so I think really I just like was shocked. Like he looked like a 33-week fetus. Like he did not look like a full-term baby at all. And so I was just like, oh my gosh. And he was long, but he was so, so skinny. And I was just like, oh my God, he's so tiny. And so I told my husband, I said, you should call the medic. And he's like, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm like, he's just so small. Like, look at him. Like, we should just make sure he's okay.
But how did he do? Like, was he fine?
He was fine.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm. He was great. Yeah. Yep. He was great. And I think if I would have waited another minute, like, I always had that in the back of my mind. Like if I needed the reassurance or, like I had like, of course, those stories from, my sister's a nurse where like the people who have their babies at home are, the druggies or whatever. And so I didn't want, like, I cared at the time. I cared what people thought about me, and I didn't want to look like, like, which people, even after the fact, people were like, what the hell? Because they saw him, and they knew like he was so tiny, and they're like, you had that baby at home. Like, for the next 3 months, people said, how much how much NICU time did he have? Like, because he was so tiny, and, so I just be like, none, he was born at home, and they'd be like, what? And, so I don't know, but I was 21 at the time. So, you live and you learn, but
Totally.
at the time. So yeah. So I was like, no, you should just call them and, just so, we know that we're shocked that he's small, or, like, I don't know, whatever, some stupid reason. So, anyway, so they came and they were fine. Like, there was like 3 or 4 of them that came in the room, and the woman told me I was a badass. And, they said, they just listened to his heart rate, and they said, no, he looks great. He's really tiny, but he looks great. And so I was like, oh, well, great. Thank you, And so that was basically it. And they left. So
they weren't
they had me like
transfer to the hospital.
Nope. I had to tell someone on the phone that I didn't want to go, which she was some snobby, I'm sure, at the hospital. Like, are you denying transfer? I think is what she said. And I was like, yes, I am, because at that moment I'm all like, at the moment I'm all, high and everything. And I'm like, yep, I am. Thanks. And so, anyway, so then they left. I mean, they were there probably like 20 minutes. And, they were nice, and there wasn't too many people in the room. And so it really wasn't bad, but I mean, obviously I didn't do it again, and I wouldn't do it next time, but it is what it is.
And I mean, all things considered, it sounds like you actually got what you wanted, was another pair of eyes to kind of evaluate your son, and then they left. I mean, that doesn't sound that bad to me.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. And basically just like, I don't know, I knew like people are judgy and, tell you, you're crazy and whatnot, but it was nice. Just, the words of affirmation, just like, oh yeah, he looks fine. Like, not like,
right.
What are you doing?
Totally. And that's the piece that sucks, is that you don't know what you're going to get. And so for your story where it was cool, another person's story is that they were shamed and bullied into a transfer, so that's the bummer about kind of opening up that particular can of worms, is it might work out wonderfully and you might get what you wanted out of the system, or it might be like a whole nother horrible thing. So thankfully for you, it worked really well.
Yeah, basically rolling the dice is what it is. Yeah.
Okay, so that's amazing. What an awesome, crazy story.
I know. It was pretty crazy. So so then my placenta, so they helped me cut the cord because I didn't boil my scissors yet. And his cord was completely white and everything. And so I cut it, with their scissors, but I cut it. And then the placenta, I could feel the placenta was ready to come out. And so I went and I tried to go pee. Sorry. I'm gonna sit up. So I tried to go pee because I knew I really had to go. And I couldn't go pee and I couldn't get my placenta out. And so finally, after like a few tries, I was like, well, I'll get in the shower and then maybe, the water will help. And so I got in the shower, and then I don't remember which came first, but I was able to get rid of both the pee and the placenta. And then I just actually didn't even have a bowl there. So I just set it like on a towel and then just crawled into bed with my baby. And then we were awake for like a little bit, but I was so tired that we actually went to sleep like pretty shortly after, because he was born sometime between 3:30 and 4. I don't know when exactly he was born. But yeah, so total it was like 12 to 13 hours.
Awesome.
For his labor. So yeah, so we just snuggled in bed and slept like a good 6 hours. So
man,
so it was great.
I love it.
Yeah.
It's just like, this is obviously why we do this podcast, like on one hand, it sounds so totally nuts that you would choose to just, in spite of all of this
Uh-huh.
stuff, in spite of a little, pressure from the system and then your husband's situation and all of this, that you're just like, no, I saw what was available at the hospital, and rest assured that's not happening for me. And
Yes.
then of course you have this normal, beautiful story out of it. It's so cool.
Mhm.
Okay, so
Yeah.
awesome. So take me into your third and most recent birth.
So yeah, so on to the next.
And also,
So
I'm curious, since you're a
she mhm.
military family, how did the military community, I mean, you're living on base, so how does the military community receive this story?
Yeah, I got a lot of jaw drops. Like we had to go in and do the paperwork, which later, I don't know, people said we had 30 days, but initially we were told we had 10 days to get all the paperwork done. So like fortunately his recovery for me, or the birth recovery for me, was great. Like I was totally fine. I was up. I didn't feel like, I didn't feel terrible or anything. And so we were out doing those things, getting the paperwork. But yeah, I mean, oh gosh, like the comments from just the paperwork people, and then, oh, the midwife, and there's no midwife. What? Like, they were just floored. Like they had obviously never heard of it, or, whatever. And then it was like, oh, but you have you're military, you have, free hospital birth. And, it's just like, oh, that's not what I wanted to do.
Yeah.
But yeah, so my third baby, she was not conceived until my youngest was, how old was he? 4, until his 4th birthday.
Oh, so you had a nice little
So
gap
we
there.
waited. I did. Yeah. Yep. We had a really good gap. And for the longest time, like, I don't remember when it started, but I had feelings of like, or maybe dreams, I don't know, just like, I hoped it was true that like someday we would have like another little girl. And so for the longest time, like sometimes I would just sit and ponder on it and just think about it, like, okay, are we going to have another little girl someday? Like maybe, 5 years from now or 10 years from now. But like, I really hope that I get that little girl. And so finally, we decided to have another baby, 4 years later. And so, first cycle again, conceived. And that pregnancy was rough. It was totally night and day from my other two. And we own a furniture company, like our own little small business of building farmhouse furniture. And so I knew, or not knew, but I suspected going in that being around, like when I stain the furniture, the chemical smell is like really strong and probably super horrible for you. But I knew going in, like, I was like, I'm probably going to be sick because my body is probably going to be like detoxing from all this, whatever crap. And so, sure enough, until 8 weeks, I don't know why, but until 8 weeks on the dot, like I was like on my deathbed, like every day I could not do a thing. Like I threw up and I gagged and I dry heaved and I couldn't eat anything. I lost like 5 pounds. And it was really brutal. So finally that ended around week 8 and I started to feel better again. I was like, okay, this is great. Now I can get back to life and I can breathe again. But yeah, the whole pregnancy, it's really interesting, like just how different every pregnancy is, because like with my son, I was like so in tune with him, and like I was just on like this bubble of like euphoria the whole time. Like I don't know, like it was just so different. Like I was just in the clouds the whole time and just so in tune with him. And then with this one, with my third, like I felt fine, but I did not feel like, I don't know, like I didn't feel like spiritual at all. Like I didn't feel like you know, super in tune with her. I didn't feel like, I don't know, like it was just really different. I just felt like normal, you know, like normal and like, you know, present or whatever. And so basically, I mean, the whole pregnancy was fine. And again, I saw, so since we're back in Oregon for this one, I saw the same midwife that I saw for my first baby, and not a lot, but just like, you know, an appointment here and there. And she knew, obviously, because she knew that I had my son at home in California. And she supported me, and she was like, you know, I think that's great. You're awesome, whatever, you know, blah, blah, blah. And so finally at, let's see, 40 weeks and 2 days, I woke up at 3 o'clock on the dot, and to like fluid pouring between my legs. And I was like, I remember like a couple days before, it was a full blue moon. And so that night I went out, like after everyone went to sleep, and I went out and I like stood, like the sky was clear, and I stood under the moon, and I was just like telling my baby that, you know, like I was ready when she was, but if she wants to wait a few weeks, that's okay. You know, like I was in no rush at all. And especially because like I'd felt that she was fine, and, you know, my belly kept growing, and I didn't feel like she was going to be small or anything like that. And so I was like, you know, this is great. Just keep going, you know?
Totally.
And so anyway, so yeah, so then I woke up 2 days later, and really like, it's kind of funny because I was just like, I was kind of annoyed. Like I didn't want my waters breaking before labor, because I feel like it's this weird, like, I don't know, what do you call that? Not like purgatory, but I don't know, like, it's just this weird place where like my water breaks, but I'm not in labor. Like,
I mean, it's
what do I
kind
do?
of
I'm not.
purgatory.
Yeah, like it's just so weird. And like, you know, I'm not in labor land. I'm not like, you know, I'm still fully present. Like,
but you know it's
it
coming.
was just weird.
Mhm.
Yes. So it was weird. So I got all like anxious, and I went to the bathroom, and then I remembered that I had heard on Marin's podcast, the Indie Birth, that you can see the specks of vernix, like that comes off their skin. You can see it in the fluid. And so I had a towel between my legs, and I looked at it, and I could see the little specks. And so that got me really excited, because I was just like, oh, my baby, like, you know, she's in there, you know, like I know she's in there, and I can see, you know, like, you know, a little bit of proof, or I don't know, whatever, you know, that this is happening. And that just got me really excited. And so I tried to go back to sleep, and eventually I did. And then I kind of just woke to eat like 2 bowls of cereal, like a couple times. And then I didn't get out of bed until like, I think 9 in the morning. And I just kind of like labored throughout the day. Like my husband kept the kids home from school, which in hindsight we shouldn't have done, but I thought, okay, maybe I'll have a fast labor this time.
Sure.
And so we wanted the kids to be there. And so, yeah, so they were home. So it was just like this weird feeling. Like, again, like I wanted the nighttime. And so, you know, it's morning time, and I'm like, I want coffee, but I'm not going to drink coffee. And I just didn't really know what to do, you know? And so, sorry, my
Yo.
Oh my God. How long have I been talking?
Well,
And you have
well, let's see. Your baby made some noise and then shit, where did it log out? All of a sudden, well, you were like talking with your baby and then it hung out and then it hung up.
Oh, okay.
But you were, well, you were in labor and you were home, your waters had opened, you were home, you were in purgatory, you slept all night, and then you didn't want to have coffee. And then that was kind of when
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So yeah, so basically like I just labored throughout the day. I still felt like kind of funny, like I was waiting like with my son, it was so like it was just this magical like experience where I just like I don't know, like it was like a whole different like level, like a whole different consciousness. I don't know. But with her, I was just so like I was still just present and like in my conscious mind. And so I just, kind of just hung out and just labored throughout the day and finally downloaded a contraction timer. I think at like 1 or 2, and then realized they were like 3 to 4 minutes apart. And so I was like, oh, okay, I guess this is really happening. And so I got in the shower. I took like a really long shower. And it's funny because I was so emotional and I like wanted to cry and like feel good and like, just like get into the zone. But I couldn't cry. Like I couldn't cry. I don't know why. I don't know what was going on, like hormonal wise or oxytocin or what, but like I couldn't cry. And I just I don't know, like it was just funny. Like I I was in the shower for a couple hours, but eventually I got out and I just was just hanging out. Like, the kids were there, like the kids were like playing, and I had my best friend come. She came after work. So she came around like 5:30. And so I think when she got there at that point I was in the bath again. And she just sat with me and we just talked and hung out. And and it was interesting, like, because with my last birth I didn't have anyone there.
Mm-hmm.
And with her, like, I wanted her there because I wanted someone to like ground me almost, like, like I was like kind of afraid of having like an anxiety attack or, like thinking like stupid nonsense and freaking myself out. And so I decided, because I told her, I was like, well, I think I want you there, I'll keep you posted. And anyway, so I had her
And
come over.
most women
Mhm.
want support in their labor. I mean, we're walking
Right.
through the veil and it's fucking intense, and that's what's so sad
Yeah.
about the state of birth in this patriarchy is it's so
Hmm.
convoluted now that to have support generally means we have to go to the hospital or we have to spend thousands of dollars on a regulated midwife. And then I find that in the free birth community women feel like they have to justify why they want people there, and it's
No
like,
orange.
oh.
Yeah.
um
Sorry.
yeah, no, it's okay. Yeah, anyway, so of course you wanted support there. Of course. That's completely
Yeah.
understandable.
So yeah, so it was nice having her there. Like she grounded me and kept me like chill, and like we just hung out and stuff. But at the same time, it was like different. It was really different having someone else there, and not just not just myself or not just my husband in the other room. So yeah. So anyway, so she offered to watch the kids so I could just have like some alone time with my hubby. And so we were in bed for like, I don't know, like an hour or two. And just kind of, like cuddling and stuff and having sexy time. And then like contractions would get kind of intense. And then I'd have to like, jump up and be on all fours like for the contraction and then lay back down again. And so finally, like I had been eating like a ton. Like I've never, like I ate like I think at one point I ate like 4 or 5 chicken thighs. And then like just like barbecue sauce, I just cooked them, in a pan. And like, I shit you not, like 30 minutes later, my stomach was growling again. Like my body was just like plowing through the food, like just like feed me. I need more energy. And so finally my husband put the kids to bed and he was like, okay, well, I'll go get, I don't know what it was, teriyaki chicken or something from some restaurant. So I'm like, okay. So at this point, it's like, I think 8 o'clock or so. So he gets back and it's finally getting dark out. And so, again, I'm like, okay, it's dark out, like my kids are in bed. And like immediately that got things rolling. Like I couldn't even eat the food that he brought home. Like we were downstairs in the kitchen, and then like I had a contraction that brought me like to my knees. I had to like get down in a squat and like relax for it. And I was like, oh boy, okay, I'm going to go back upstairs and get in the bath. And so I went back up and got back in the bath. And then it was pretty, like, I started feeling shaky and nauseous. And so I was like, oh boy, okay, maybe like, transition is happening and, maybe this baby will be born soon. And so, so for the next like 2 hours, I've never even heard of a transition this long, but it was a really long transition. Like I was super shaky. I kept throwing up. I couldn't keep anything down, but I was so hungry, so I kept trying to eat stuff. And then I threw it right back up. And so finally, like I got out of the bath and I was in my bedroom and it was baby time. Like I was like putting towels down. I was like trying, like, I felt like this like wild animal. Like I'm like putting towels down and trying to, again, protect the rug and trying to like make my space, but it was all slippery. And I was like, no, I can't do this. And I'm just like moving around in the room. And finally I'm just like, oh, I'm so tired. And like, my friend and my husband, I think my husband went downstairs to make me more fruit. And I don't know where my friend went, but she was somewhere else. And so I was like, okay, I'm so tired. I'm just going to lay down and take a nap. And so I lay on my bed and baby was pretty low because it felt really funny. Like I laid down on my side and closing my legs was like, it felt really weird. And, but I was like, I'm determined to get this nap because I'm just so freaking tired. And so I slept and I don't know how long I slept. My husband said it was like a minute, but I don't know if it was a minute or 5 or whatever. But I woke up when he came back in the room with a plate of like beautifully decorated fruit. And I'm like, where the fuck have you been? And he's like, I made you this fruit. And I'm like, why are you taking so long? Like I'm dying up here. And so like immediately I sit up on the bed and I'm like, a baby like just moved down. And I was like, oh my God, she's coming. And he's like, what do you need? And I'm like, help me get to the toilet. I have to poop really bad. Because normally I always empty my bowels in early labor, like completely. I've done that the past 2 times. And so this time I didn't. And so I was like, I have to poop so bad. Like, just help me to the toilet. And so he helps me to the bathroom and I'm sitting on the toilet. And then like at this point, like full on like fetal ejection reflex, like I don't know if I'm screaming, but I'm like roaring and whatever. I'm being super vocal. And I keep thinking like, okay, baby's going to be right there. And then I didn't feel any baby, which that was another thing. Like with this labor, I was like, okay, I'm not going to check myself. I'm not going to do any of that. Because with my son, which I think I forgot to mention this too, but I checked myself twice during that labor. Mm-hmm. And I checked myself once in the beginning and then once like 2 hours before he was born. And both times it felt the same. Like I thought at the time it was like a 4 or a 5. And so I was like discouraged, And so this time I was like, I'm not doing any of that. Like I'm not, whatever. When this baby comes, then she'll come, Mm-hmm. And so I reached in and I tried to feel her head, and it was like a few inches up, and I'm just like, oh my God, are you kidding me? Because it was just like, I felt like I was pooping a bowling ball. Like, it's really what it felt
You
like.
pretty much are.
Right? Yeah. And so, and then the other thing was like, throughout the 2-hour transition, she was punching me like ferociously. Like,
Oh, that's
I think she was trying, I know, isn't it? I think she was trying to move like into a better position because she came out facing my thigh. So she came out like, you know, a little Willy Wonka. And so I think she was trying to turn, because my babies are always posterior the entire pregnancy, and then they flip right before they're born. And so, so I think she was trying to do that, but I don't know, maybe it was too late, or I don't know. She has a really big forehead, so maybe that's why, I don't know. And anyway, so yeah, so it was really difficult. So the fetal ejection reflex is going, but I am also like assisting in that and like grunting, you know, through it, and like helping a little bit on my end. And so finally, like, I get off the toilet. My husband's afraid she's going to be born in the toilet, which whatever. So I can't say no. So I'm just like, okay, fine. So I get down and I'm like squatting, and finally, like, I don't know, 3 or 4 more contractions probably. And her head finally comes out, and it's just like, oh my God, like finally, like that bowling ball was so big. And so then I wait, you know, I breathe because I'm like yelling at this point. And so I breathe and wait for the next contraction, and then her body emerges, and then my husband grabs her and quickly, you know, hands her to me, and she cried. She let out one cry right when she came out. And yeah, and I mean, she was just, you know, pink right away, and her cord was beautiful. I didn't get a picture of it like right away. Like my husband took pictures like, you know, probably a minute or two after, but like her cord was like, it was like those ones that you see like midwifery places post pictures of, like it was super thick and spirally, and like, yeah, it was so cool. And I was just like, oh my God. Cause even, I don't know what my first baby's was, but you know, with my sons, it wasn't like that. And so I was like, oh my God, that's so cool.
And that must've felt good to see.
It did. Yes. Like, I felt like successful, you know, like, not that my other baby wasn't fine, but I was just like, yay, like, you know, I have like a chubby baby, and yeah, it did it. It felt great. And yeah, anyway, so we just sat there for a few minutes, and, you know, she was looking up at us, and
you have one of my most favorite right after birth photos.
Oh, yeah, I think I know which one you're talking about.
Oh, it's just amazing. Just the joy on your face, and the way that just the rawness and the nakedness. And we'll have to post that with this episode, because it's just,
okay.
It encapsulates, you know, just the rawness and beauty and joy of birthing, you know.
Yeah. Yeah. And the relief too. Like, I remember oh, like, because after my son, it was just like, I was so happy and stuff, but like after her, I was just so relieved. Like, it was just so much work, you know, to get her out, that I was just like, it was just so, I don't know, just so amazing, you know? And so, yeah, so we went and got in bed, and then the placenta, I could feel it was ready to come out. And so we cut her cord because I wanted to get the placenta out, because it was like, I was like having like birthing contractions again, and I'm like moaning with them, and I'm like, okay, I need to get this thing out of me like now. And so, so we had cut her cord, and then I went to the shower, and I went to, I brought a bowl, and then I was like, I'll just do the same thing that I did last time. And so I squatted down and peed and birthed the placenta, and then came back to bed and just snuggled up. Like, as soon as I got back into bed, she was ready to nurse, and she was like doing the breast crawl, which was really cool, because I also, like, my other babies didn't do that, or I didn't have, you know, the opportunity. And so, yeah, so she was like rooting and trying to find the breast. And so she nursed for a good hour, and then we finally went to sleep. At that time I was so like, I was so like euphoric and happy that I was having a hard time going to sleep, even though I was so tired. But eventually, we went to sleep, and that was that, really.
Beautiful. It's about as good as it gets.
Yeah, it was pretty great.
Mm, that's awesome.
But the postpartum, like for her too, was really hard. Like I really didn't even get out of bed and like go downstairs until I think it was day 5. Like I just couldn't, which I had a cough too, that like I was afraid of like everything falling out. Like it was like I was just like, oh my gosh, I need to just be in bed. Like, and it took like probably 3 months before I felt normal again. Like it took quite a while, which again maybe was just her big forehead. I don't know.
No, but I also think that that's
But
something we need to talk about more because, I mentioned this in another podcast recently that it's,
mhm,
I think that there's this idea that if you do everything right and you have this normal undisturbed birth and blah 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 that you're going to feel
mhm,
amazing and you're going to bounce back, and the
yes,
reality is, especially after, I mean I shouldn't even say that because sometimes it happens more with the first and sometimes it happens more with the third, but birth is really hardcore and it's normal and
mhm,
perfectly understandable for it to take multiple weeks or months, to feel kind of whatever that back to normal is for you. But again,
yeah,
like we're so driven by that bounce back mentality of our culture, that I do think we need to
mhm,
normalize. I mean, to me, with what I hear, I think it's totally understandable that it would take you a couple months to feel back to normal. Absolutely.
yeah, yeah, and that's a good point too. Like I've seen that where it's like, oh, my natural birth, my recovery was so much faster than, my epidural birth. But it's like, well, why? Like, there's really no, I mean, that's great that people have that, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, there's really no like, correlation
Yeah.
between the two. Like, I don't know, for some reason, it was just a hard recovery.
Mhm. Yeah. And sometimes I think it's harder after multiple kids because you are going to be more pushed to get up and just make that snack or put the other kid to bed,
hmm
or all that it takes to run a household of 5 now. I mean, it's
Yeah.
so much harder to commit, or even to have it even be possible to stay in bed and rest.
hmm Yeah, that's true. My husband was off work, so that's what made that possible. Because otherwise, yeah, who knows
Mhm.
what I would have had to deal with. But it was really nice. Like my family came over a lot shortly, but came over just to bring meals. So that was really nice. Like
Good.
it was amazing because then I was like, oh, thank you. Like, you bring me like cooked food and then you don't stay more than 20 minutes. And,
Perfection.
it was great. Yeah.
And
So, yeah,
is that something you voiced, like drop it and don't stay, or was that just
I
understood?
didn't. No, I never did. And in California, obviously we didn't have anyone because we were there alone. But yeah, no, I mean, it was just, I don't know, just my siblings and my parents. And yeah, I don't know. It was just really nice. I guess they just knew. I mean, my mom has had 4, so maybe that's why. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Awesome.
yeah, but it was nice.
I love it. I love your stories. I love, as usual, just the normalcy of it and the power of it. And um I just, it's so important for these stories to get told because again, as everyone who listens knows, my intention with this is just to normalize what is already normal, coming back to center and
mhm.
and trusting our intuition and following our truth. And for you and for so many of us, it's just to have normal birth in our homes with our families. And that's exactly what you actualized. And I'm just so proud of you and inspired by you. And I know that this
Oh, thank
story,
you.
yeah, and this story will go far and will inspire and normalize, women's experiences all over the world. So thank you for sharing this, and just so beautiful.
Oh, you're so welcome. And just one more thing, if I
Yeah,
can just
of
add.
course.
Another thing, like is like, it's always fun to like think like, okay, what if I was in a hospital, And like this one, like from the time my waters broke, like it was 21 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And like, I don't know, like, now that I'm pregnant with my fourth, I'm like, how long is my next labor going to be?
It's going to be like 20
longer
minutes.
with each one. Yeah.
That's interesting.
Well, and I know normally, it's always the other way around, but I mean, who knows what would have happened in a hospital, like 21 hours is.
We do know you would have had a C-section.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really
I know,
nuts.
it's just crazy.
Most stories I hear, well, obviously all births are intervened with in captivity. So it's not like that amazing to say that most stories I hear would have been intervened with, but I mean, mine, I'm confident would have been a C-section. It sounds like at least one of yours would have.
Yeah.
A lot of women that I speak to who have normal births, because also we're redefining what normal is. The range of normal,
Yes.
the variability of normal. When we hear these Freebirth stories is so much wider than ever what is allowed in the medical model. So
Yeah.
that's another huge reason why it's so important to share these stories, because these stories don't exist in captivity, which is why
I know they don't.
Yeah. And if you're familiar with my story, like I pathologized my own labor because I had only seen long labors handled in captivity. So, these stories are, just even like what you just said, the fact that your third birth took so long, so many women, because of this lie that they're supposed to go faster, will freak out. Excuse me. And just, there's just such a wide range of normal, and that there isn't any one way. And yeah, your stories are amazing and healthy and beautiful and safe and following your truth. And exactly like you said, just the joy and the relief that you experienced after this birth. It just affects your whole family. It's so beautiful.
Yeah, it really does. And that's like the other thing, this time the kids were older. And so it was like my daughter came in and like right when we crawled into bed, and she snuck in, and I'm like, oh, come over here and, meet your baby sister. And, and she had told me that she had heard me pushing Thea out and she didn't want to interrupt. So she waited. And I was just like, oh my God, like it was just so sweet,
That is so sweet.
And just, I mean, it's just like, I can't imagine like, being in a hospital and like like 3 days later you bring home a new baby and, kids have been at grandma's or, whatever, like, I don't know. It just seems not ideal, like opposed to just having them there at the moment. It's just, I don't know, it's something really special.
Absolutely. Yeah. It's really, God, it just will never stop blowing my mind that we are just doing the most normal thing. And it is so, so rare. And, family birth, right? Like that needs to be reintroduced into our society.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy.
Well, thank you so much. It's wonderful to connect with you.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me. I know. I'm so excited. Got to finally talk to you.
That's it for today, everyone. Join us next week for another episode of the Freebirth podcast. Thanks for joining us. And remember, your body, your choice. Lots of love.